Hello, everybody. My name's Rihanna, and I'm going to talk to you about the app that I developed for my CSE 335 class. It's called Misato Sports. So, for my project idea, I like to play basketball casually, so I figured that it'd be like a cool way to kind of have an app to keep track of each matches and wins and losses. And I know that there's a lot of different variety of sports out there, so I kind of wanted to keep it pretty general so that anybody who plays sports can use it. So I kind of just wanted, people who play casually to keep track of their matches, and then hopefully have that keep them motivated so that way they continue to keep up with their hobbies and activities. So basically what my app does is it'll give you like a breakdown of your wins and losses on like a game stat page that I'll have a few slides later a picture of. And then it also goes into like a table view where you can add and delete personalized matches. So this is the class diagram that I ended up with after implementing my code. If you start on the left side of the picture, it's going to be the sign up and the login view. And a lot of these different classes are mainly just the different view controllers that I have. I have a lot of them, and that's kind of how I broke down to kind of section it out. So after the login and the sign up, you have the API view, which in that class you have a few structs. That's mainly to help with the response that the API gives to help process that JSON file and then be able to display it later on. Then I have the profile view. This is basically when the user signs up, it contains their favorite sport, their age, and like a profile picture that they might have. So that's where you would be able to find like the display for that. And then the home view just basically kind of lets you move around to the different types of views. And then up here we have the user class, and that's going to be the NS managed objects for all of the usernames, passwords, favorite sports, and age. And then I have another NS managed object class for the sports, so that keeps track of their wins, losses, what the match name is, and then what the username is, so that way we can pull it up later on when they try and look up their individualized matches. So up next is going to be the MVC diagram that I made. So up top, it's going to be the controller. Basically, this is going to handle all of the user interactions. It's also going to handle all the logins and signups with the controller, and it uses core data for it. It also handles the web API. So it's in my API, it basically fetches all of the current leagues in that. It also retrieves the total wins and losses for all the matches that the user has played. And then it retrieves a list of all users for the login page. And then a list of all the matches that contains the match name, if it's a win or a loss for that particular match. And then it sends updated list of matches back to the core data. And then it also sends an updated list of users to the core data as well. So when the controller talks to the view, it's basically going to update the table view for the user list and as well for the matches list. It's also going to display the REST request for the map API, and then it's going to display the web API request. So in the view, it's going to respond to user interactions. It's also going to provide a map of locations so the user can basically search their sport that they want to look at and then find different locations that they can go ahead and play that sport. It also displays the login and sign up, as well as displaying the wins and losses of the user. It also displays a table list of matches with the names and the win status. It also displays any buttons to be able to update the table view, so the add or delete. It also gets the API of all current leagues and displays that information, as well as user information, so basically their age, favorite sport, and then a profile picture. And so when the view talks back to the controller, it's going to be for any button clicks for either signups or logging in. if they're making any edit to the table cells, again, adding or deleting those when they're accessing the map API or the web API. And then when the controller talks to the model, it's basically if there's any updates in saving new user information, saving the matches list, or saving a new users list. So in the model itself, it's going to be able to store the following information in the core data. So that's going to be all signed up users, a list of matches containing the username, the match name, if it was a win or if it was a loss. And that's basically a Boolean, so it's either true or false. It also handles notifying the controller of all updates to either of the lists. And when the model talks back to the controller, it's gonna notify of any addition or deletion of a sports list, and it's gonna notify the user login session. So if the user is different or the same. So next is going to be some capabilities of my app. So the first one that's going to be shown here is going to be for any pre-existing users. They'll be able to log in and get their existing matches that they have already previously added. So the first picture on the left is going to show basically the game stats. So the total number of wins and the total number of losses is going to be able to be displayed up on there. And then if you wanted to break that down into an individual match and see which ones are the user has won or lost, you can click on the view all games button and it'll take you to the picture that's on the right hand side. And it's basically going to be a table view, and in this in each cell is going to be the match name on the left, and then on the right hand side it's going to be whether that match was won, if it was true or false. So for another capability, once you're in that table view of the individual matches, if you click on the plus button on that top right, it's going to be able to allow the user to add a new match. And so basically all that's needed is going to be the name of the match, and then in that second text area, it's going to be true or false of whether you won that match. Some limitations of my app is, first off, is going to be there's no checks for if there's any duplicate usernames when signing up. So the issue for this is going to be when fetching the data from the core data, it's just going to return the first username that was entered in. So it might not always be accurate if there is a duplicate username. Second is going to be the web API that I used had a long list of all the leagues, so I wasn't able to implement a scroll feature in there, so basically had to cut out about half of them. And lastly, another limitation is I was not able to implement a way of separating the different types of sports there are. So in that matches view with the table, it's just gonna be all different types of sports, and that are only separated by the name and then if they won or not. Some lessons that I learned while creating this project is, first off, going to be the MVC diagram. I have heard of and used MVC in my code previously, but this is the first time that I've actually drawn a diagram for it. The next lesson that I learned is going to be using the UI walkthrough, those tools. It was a really helpful way to brainstorm the layout of my app, because I had a lot of ideas on what I wanted to do with it, but I was having trouble visualizing it, and using the walkthrough really helped me put it all together. The next lesson that I learned is using segues on certain conditions. So I was having some issue with trying to figure out when to display a segue or not. This was mainly for the login and the sign up pages. I did find a function, the should perform segue one, and basically it allows you to perform a segue only when certain conditions are met, and this was super helpful on verifying the users on if they had already signed up or not. It was also useful in checking if existing users' passwords matched with what was being entered currently. And the last lesson that I learned when creating all of this is parsing API responses. I've called a few API responses for some classes before, but I've never parsed them in the Swift language, so this was a little trickier sometimes, and it was a good, useful lesson to have. And some suggestions that I would have in the future for improving my app. First is going to be the sign up and the login features. So as I mentioned before, it doesn't do too well when there's duplicate users. It doesn't display the correct information. So I would want to improve on this and not have any duplicate usernames. Secondly, I would want to improve the game stats view. So I noticed that if you updated the matches table and went back into the view, it didn't automatically update right away. You had to go back to the home view before it would update the game stats view. Another suggestion that I would have is I kind of wanted to learn more about user interaction, so having different users interact with the same app, or showing the current user different users' progress to hopefully get them more motivated. And then lastly, I wanted to improve the aesthetic of my app. So I feel like it kind of came out a little plain, and I kind of wanted to touch up and make it look more professional. But even with these suggestions in the future, I do still think that this was a super rewarding project to have done. It was very useful in terms of experience. I always wanted to learn how to work more in app development, and I think that this was a good stepping stone to use in the future. So yeah, that was the end of my project. I just want to say thanks for watching, and that I really enjoyed this project and making the app and getting that experience.